Welcome to Just Another Autism Podcast. In this podcast, I, Eileen Lamb, explore the personal journeys of people in the autism community. From autistic individuals navigating daily life to the caregivers, educators, and employers who support them. Each week, we shed light on the different ways autism shapes lives, offering first-person perspectives from every angle of the community. Annette Addo-Yobo will be an incoming law student at South Texas College of Law in 2025 and is the first immigrant-born Miss Texas. Her platform really underscores the importance of autism safety in the context of autism awareness after an incident involving her younger autistic brother. Since then, she has been a community and legislative advocate working with nationally recognized organizations, including Autism Speaks, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, and the Organization for Autism Research. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course. So before we get started, why don't you tell us a little bit about your connection to autism? And I know it's your brother is on the spectrum, but can you tell us like how it has influenced your advocacy work?
Yeah, so my younger brother, Andrew, he is on the spectrum, and he has taught me a lot. Though he is nonverbal, I always say that he's spoken very little, but he has taught me so much. He's taught me a lot about patience, about how advocacy can look in different ways, being able to not speak for him, but to be able to speak about his experiences and be able to advocate for policy, programming, and legislation that benefits people like him. And of course, advocate for safety, because safety is a very important conversation when it comes to autism. I think people don't talk about it enough. And so that's really something that I'm wanting to incorporate as well.
And what made you want to advocate for safety specifically? Like, did something happen with your brother?
Yes. In my senior year of high school, he was a sophomore at the time. He had wandered out of the school, not past the classroom, past police officers on campus, and wandered into the intersection in front of my high school. And had it not been for me feeling sick that day and my dad coming to pick me up, I don't think we would have ever found my brother, because it was my dad who found him wandering along on the intersection. And it really highlighted to me the lack of training sometimes that teachers have, but especially with police officers, and the idea that you should be able to notice that someone's on the spectrum, and that's not always going to be the case. And so as Miss Texas, and even in Miss Southlake, which was my previous title, I made efforts to go out and talk to law enforcement officers about my experience and my story with my brother, and hopefully be able to encourage them to seek training, seek more information about autism so they can better care for our kids and our friends and families on the spectrum.
Yeah, wandering is terrifying, especially during the summer, when there is bodies of water and
Yes.
swimming pools. And I've experienced the same thing with my son, Charlie, who's also nonverbal. And I've noticed something too, is that people like bystanders, they don't want to help. I feel like they're uncomfortable. Like there was a time, several times when my son, Charlie, ran away in the street and I was running after him, like clearly trying to catch him, and people like who were like close to him were too afraid to like grab him. And
Yeah.
I understand that it's you don't want to touch a stranger's child, right? But
Right.
I think we could also raise awareness with the public, in certain circumstances it's okay to touch
Yeah.
stranger's child. Like, please help me out before he reaches the intersection,
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's happened with my brother when he would run out of the house and be in the neighborhood. There would be other neighbors watching me chase him, but they're not sure whether to go in and stop. They're not sure whether to call someone for help. They kind of freeze up. And I empathize with that. I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't familiar with the situation. But like you said, I think raising more awareness about that would make people more comfortable to intervene when they notice, a child is wandering.
And maybe it's on us to say like, hey, he has autism, can you grab him?
Mhm.
Maybe there's a code name or something to alert people that it's okay to touch the child, grab him. But yeah,
Mhm.
definitely food for thought and very important work you're doing
Yeah.
here.
Thank you.
I think I know the answer to that, but what really inspired you to combine your passion for autism advocacy with your journey in the pageant world?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is, at first when I competed in the Miss Texas program, I was Miss Dallas, and my platform at first was youth mental health, because I myself have a mental health diagnosis and learned from my experience just the lack of understanding and knowledge, and in some cases, empathy, particularly within the African community and the immigrant community. And so that's what I started off with. But my talent was a spoken word about autism. And after that first year as at the Miss Texas competition, I had so many parents and family members and random strangers come up to me and say, thank you for speaking up about my grandson or my daughter or my brother or a friend that I know who's on the spectrum. And that really encouraged me to make that my platform instead, because for a while I just kind of thought I was the only one who went through that. I knew there were other families with, people on the spectrum, but I hardly ever met anybody in my lifetime that had the same experience that I did. And so the fact that there were a lot of people who came up to me and shared that when it wasn't my platform, I thought, man, how many other people could benefit from this if I made this my platform instead? And so that's when I made the switch this second year to make autism awareness my platform. And it's been so rewarding, so therapeutic for me in a way to get connected to other family members and other people who have gone through what I've gone through. And it's helped me to realize that I'm not alone in this journey, being a caregiver and a sibling. And there are a lot of other people who have gone through what I've gone through and can connect me to resources, connect my family to resources, and help me just find that community.
And that community is so important. I mean, it can be a
Yes.
very lonely journey when you don't have people around you. I know you mentioned something because we met at an event a few weeks ago, and that some people in your community back then even thought that autism was some sort of like demon, or like there was a lot of like many misconceptions, right,
Mhm.
around what that was. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I can speak on Ghanaian culture. In some instances, there are, people that believe that there's like a spiritual attack when somebody has autism. And, that unfortunately affected my parents. And they thought, well, if we send our son to go and get healing at a church somewhere, well, maybe this will just all go away. And I'm a woman of faith. I understand and believe that God can do miracles. But I can't imagine what it would have been like for my brother to think, well, man, something must be deeply wrong with me that they think they have to take me to a church and they can't just connect me to something to get help. And unfortunately, some people go so far as to believe that there's nothing that the outside world or that these community organizations or advocacy groups can do for their kids. And I say that that's not true. My parents did eventually come around and, connect my brother to the help that he needed. But I know in Ghana still, there are some people who just don't believe that this is something that they need to spend their time being an advocate for. Unfortunately, there are some families who will still abandon their kids, who will kind of leave them on the street and say, this is not my child. I don't have that kind of problem, so I don't know why that would happen to me. Uh, and I'm just glad that my parents were able to frame it for me that my brother's actually a blessing because he's taught me so much. He's, given us awareness on so many things and allowed us to champion something so near and dear to so many people, but yet has not had as much of a platform as it deserves. And that's, one of the things that I'm very grateful for is that my brother has given me an opportunity to advocate for other families who may not be able to have that platform that I have, and hopefully advocate for more to be done so that we don't have to spend so much time struggling and we can actually get our kids help so much sooner.
That's fantastic, and I really love how you're using your platform for the better good like that, and you're gonna reach even more people now that you've been crowned Miss Texas. How was
Yes.
the experience? Was it like surreal? Did you like picture it before it happened or?
It was completely surreal. I don't even remember anything after they called the first runner up. I don't remember anything. I just remember the crowd roar and then just going down. That's about all I remember. So I've had to watch my crowning video over and over again. One, to be sure that this is real and not a dream. But two, to just remember what even happened. And it's been such an incredible experience. I have hit almost a month of being Miss Texas. I've traveled to 3 different states. I've had 14 different appearances, traveled over 4,000 miles just in a month. So I've been very busy, but it's been so rewarding, and I'm just excited for what the next 11 months has in store for me.
That's amazing. Sounds really busy.
Yes.
I hope you like traveling.
Oh, yes. I love traveling. It's always something I've enjoyed doing. So now that I get to do it all the time, it makes it even more fun.
That's good. How do you plan to use your new title of Miss Texas to promote autism awareness and inclusion? Is this going to be part of your how do they call them, the talent in the competition?
Yes, so I'm still going to be doing something with autism awareness and my spoken word and talent. We haven't fully fleshed it out yet. We still have a little time before Miss America because it's in January, so stay tuned for that. One of the biggest parts of the Miss Texas job is going across the state and giving school programs. And my school program, I have 2 different ones, but the one that I love doing the most is the one for pre-K through 3rd grade, which is called the Be a Light, Be a Friend program. And it teaches kids that through a be character, hence be the light, be a friend. It's a play on the word. But with that program, I highlight that kids can have all kinds of differences, whether it's sensory differences or differences attributed to something like a disability like Down syndrome or autism, that highlighting those differences makes them more aware that they exist, but also teaching them how to be a supportive friend when they see somebody who has a challenge or a different ability. And so working with those kids to learn about those different things, be that supportive friend, and do some interactive activities where they learn about the 5 senses and the different ways that each sense could be, affected by a certain disability or limited ability. So it's a really great program. I'm really excited to be doing that across the state of Texas and hopefully preparing kids to be advocates in the classroom so that as they grow older, kids on the spectrum especially feel like they have a community of friends who understand, who can help them, who can speak up for them when other kids maybe bully them or make them feel that they're less than. So I'm wanting to start, really young because that was what I had to do with my brother. People made fun of him all the time. And I was the one having to be on the playground being like, hey, don't make fun of my brother. Or, hey, don't say that about my brother. That's really mean. So I get to do that as well. And of course, continuing the work that I do with a lot of the organizations I've worked with, Autism Speaks being one of them, Best Buddies, an organization of autism research, and just expanding the work that we do across the state of Texas and really just making sure that we're advocating, whether it's in legislation, whether it's in policy, supporting, nationwide and federal legislation like the Autism Cares Act as well, and making sure that our families are given the tools and resources and funding they need to be able to care for their kids and their loved ones.
Yeah, and on top of everything, you're going to be a law student, right? In 2025. Like, was
Yes.
it also because of autism that you wanted to pursue that career, or was it
To a
another?
degree, I've had some really unique experiences with the legal field. One, having to learn about guardianship with my brother when he turned 18. That was not something my family had really thought about until it happened. And then we were like, whoa, well, now we've got to think about what happens now. Who takes care of my brother? Who has custody over him? What does that look like? Working in a behavioral health center in graduate school and seeing the clinician side of things, but also the legal side of things just made me realize, clinicians do a lot of really great work, but there's a disconnect with the legal field and they're not sure how to translate what clinicians do and advocate for their client in the courtroom. But I also have a love for sports, and my brother also has a love for sports as well. And so I thought about having a career in sports law where I advocate for disability inclusion in the sports world, in the legal sense, and making sure that they're getting representation, whether it's in careers, whether it's being a athlete themselves, and making sure that they're getting that representation. So still kind of figuring out what that would look like. But I've got time, since I'm putting off law school for a year to be Miss Texas. But I think law school is going to open up so many opportunities for me to find ways to bring my passion for legal things and autism as well, that maybe I'll find a whole new career field that I didn't know existed.
So what's your favorite sports?
Soccer.
Nice. And as a French person, I like it. I like that
Yes.
answer. It's yeah, it's funny because when I moved to the US, to me, like, I mean, I knew soccer wasn't as popular here, but I
Mhm.
didn't expect it to be like so not popular,
Yeah.
professional soccer. And I think, over the past 15 years, it's really starting to gain
Mhm.
like popularity, but it's been very slow in the US.
Yeah, very slow. I've played soccer mostly my entire life. Played it during recess, played it during school. When I went to college, I didn't play like for a college team, but we had intramural soccer, and I would always find time to play during the week. And then my dad and I both always watched Premier League games on the weekends, and so I became a very young, indoctrinated Manchester United fan at a very, very young age. And so for a while it was fun to be a Manchester United fan. Now, not so much, but my allegiance is very strong, so we're holding on. But I've just always been a very big soccer fan.
And how do you see the role of media and public figures in changing perceptions and hopefully improving autism services?
Yeah, I think a lot of it for them just starts with talking about it. A lot of celebrities and media have large platforms with millions of followers. And in some instances, with how big they are, they get to control the narrative. And so I think it's up to them to be able to recognize that, one, they have that platform; two, that there are people who are caretakers, who are self advocates, who are new to this field. Maybe they just had a child diagnosed and they're trying to figure everything out. And this is their opportunity to be that voice and be that representation. It's not enough to just have one commercial a year that airs during the Super Bowl and say, well, that's our advocacy for disability and inclusion. That's all we're going to do. Where are autistic actors and actresses? Where are our autistic athletes? Where are they? Why aren't they getting the platforms that they should be getting to show that they're there, they exist, they belong in these spaces, and they deserve to be on some of these big red carpet opportunities? This is what they're there for. I know that this year, with the Olympics being huge, the Paralympics are providing a new opportunity to showcase disability and ability in different ways. And so I'm hoping that the media provides just as much coverage for them as they do with the General Olympics, because they're very talented individuals. Very talented. I mean, I am not a runner, and just to see in the Paralympics the 100-meter dash and how they can sprint, but they have a physical disability. It's just mind blowing. And I think more people need to see people like that, and recognize that their sport, their talent, their ability is just as fascinating as, someone like Simone Biles or Michael Phelps or, Katie Ledecky, all the different names.
Well said. Couldn't agree more. I guess we'll see where that leads us. I feel like progress has been made, but
Mhm.
there's still a long way to go. So
For sure.
why did you get involved with Autism Speaks, and how did that get started?
At first, actually, I was not a fan of Autism Speaks. It actually started off as, for me and my parents, we originally weren't getting a lot of help when we reached out to Autism Speaks. And, for a while, we kind of felt, oh, this is an organization that doesn't really want to help us. They don't understand what's going on. But later, I kind of came to realize that Autism Speaks is an evolving organization, just as our understanding of autism is evolving. At one point in time, Autism Speaks believed that there was a cure. And now that we know that that's not the case, they have since changed their stance. They have grown to realize what parents, what caretakers, what siblings need, what educators need, what self-advocates need. And so it made me really appreciate that they're an organization that's open to admitting, hey, we made a mistake here. And now that we have the research and the people telling us otherwise, we're going to move forward and work with that and be a voice for that. And so that really encouraged me to want to get involved. And then going to the Hill Day in March really solidified that for me, because there were several other people who had the same story. They used to not be supporters, and now they're huge proponents for the same reason. And the staff also admitted themselves, like, yeah, we know how we were several years ago, and we've since evolved. And it really made me feel, yeah, I want to be a part of this organization. I want to be a part of an organization that recognizes the voices of the people that are affected and, wants to be that advocate for them. So it's been an incredible year with Autism Speaks so far. They're such an incredible organization, and I want more people to give them that grace to, support Autism Speaks and the work that they're doing, because the billions of dollars in funding that goes to the various states for us to be able to have the resources that we do have would not be there had it not been for the advocates that are part of Autism Speaks.
It's so important what you mentioned about organizations evolving. I mean, human beings evolve. We learn new things constantly. In 10 years, what we know to be true about autism might not be true, and we might still evolve, right? And I think it's important that people give us grace, like you mentioned, just because we're gonna make mistakes and we're gonna learn. And I think it's important to give organizations the space to make those mistakes. Before I started working at Autism Speaks, I was neutral about it, just because I read so many conflicting things on social media, right? And then I started working here, and I'm autistic myself, and I always heard that Autism Speaks didn't want to hire autistic people, and I'm so thankful for Autism Speaks, and I really thank you for asking people to give us grace and pointing out that we're evolving. What are your long-term goals for your advocacy work, I guess, and also, of course, as Miss Texas? What's next?
Yeah. One of the things that I'm hoping to be able to do, depends on if I get this grant or not, is to develop a law enforcement training program. Working with law enforcement this year, I realized they essentially get no training. And if they do get training, it is very limited, and it's usually in conjunction with those who have Alzheimer's and dementias. And they kind of treat them almost the same when they're definitely not the same. Yes, both populations wander, but the way that we resolve that is completely different. And so wanting to develop that training to hopefully one day become the gold standard for training, I want it to be to a point where every single law enforcement officer across this country is required to take this training. Because I think it just changes the trajectory of how we as caretakers or parents or siblings, if we call a police officer because our child is missing or a family member is missing and they're on the spectrum, they now have the training to know what to do. Instead of saying, hey, we're going to treat this like a missing persons case, so if you don't hear from them in 48 hours, then we can file an Amber Alert. And it's like, that's not going to work when they are not able to verbally communicate, or maybe they aren't able to understand not to talk to strangers or talk to certain people. It's just a different battle. So I'm hoping that that program is something that I can develop. I, in the state of Texas, have noticed a lot of gaps in our policy coverage when it comes to insurance for kids on the spectrum. And so I'm hoping that I get to advocate for that in the legislative session in January, advocating for more special education teachers, ensuring that the programming, the education is cost effective. It's expensive to go into ABA. It is very expensive to get a master's degree. And if we're able to provide some sort of subsidy or scholarship that makes it more accessible financially, there would be way more people who want to be a part of those programs, so that we don't have to have one ABA therapist to 10 kids. on the spectrum. That's very, very challenging. I was a behavior therapist at one point in time, and I was managing 7 kids. It's very difficult to do when there's so many different abilities, so many different likes and preferences and interactions. It's too difficult. And so we definitely need more of that as well. And that's a lot of that is what I want to do as Miss Texas. A lot of that's what I want to do as an attorney. A lot of that's what I want to do, just on the side. It's just my own personal advocacy. Because ultimately, my brother lives in Ghana. That's a 17-hour flight away. And I really don't like that is the only way that my family was able to afford his care, is for us to send him back home 17 hours away. My brother deserves to be able to be close to his family, to be able to see us all the time. I personally have not seen my brother in 2 years. And so I would really love for policy and programming to advance to the point where my brother can be able to live close to us again.
That's really heartbreaking to hear that that's what had to happen, but it really shows what needs to be done here in the USA. And I really understand now why you have that passion for autism advocacy and all of that. Like, it's really personal to you, and it all makes sense. I really hope you achieve all of this. I mean, it's wonderful that you're Miss Texas now. I feel like it's giving you a larger audience.
Yes.
Speaking of, where can people find you on social media, or do you have a website, like anywhere they can contact you?
Yeah, so I'm working on designing a website because I realized a lot of people were asking for one, and I'm like, I don't have one. I should make one. So stay tuned for the website. But in terms of social media, you can find me on Instagram at Annette Addo-Yobo without the hyphen in my name. Or if you want to follow my Miss Texas page, it's Miss America TX. And then the Spark Project, which is my social media initiative for autism awareness, is also on Instagram at the Spark Project Board.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to answer those questions today. I know it's gonna help so many people to hear from you, and I bet a lot of people are gonna look up to you as Miss Texas, and to know that you're such a fierce advocate for the community. I mean, we're lucky to have you, so thank you.
Thank you for having me.